Hello, my fellow investors. Before I get into the issue how to figure out your circle of competence, I want to explain something very important, especially to young investors. There's a famous analogy that goes like this. In the animal kingdom, the lion is the king of the land because of his strength and personality. The eagle is the king of the sky because of its agility and supremacy. And the whale is called the king of the ocean because of its size and supremacy. Now, theoretically, we can argue that the duck should be crowned the king of the animal kingdom, since the lion can't fly, the eagle can't swim, and the whale can't fly or run. But the duck can also run, and can also fly, and can also swim and dive. The answer to that is that the duck isn't great at anything. It's not a great runner, and it isn't a great flyer, and it isn't a great swimmer. It knows a little of everything, but it has no supremacy and greatness in anything. And to be a king and to be great, you have to be very great and very special at something. Now, there's some people that are ducks. They think they know everything on every issue, and actually they know very little on a lot of things. And as the thing goes, there are people who are a mile long and an inch deep, and there are people who are a mile deep and an inch wide. People who are ducks tend to think that they're lions and that they're also eagles and that they're also whales combined. And only in their 40s or 50s or 60s, when half their life has gone by and they see just a trail of failures, only then they start to realize that they're actually ducks. So this video isn't meant for young people who are overflowing with confidence and believe that they're special and have great abilities and they think they're superior in every industry. This video is meant for people who are truly and truthfully understand what they're good at and what they're bad, but sometimes they didn't figure out what's their circle of competence. So let's get to the chase. As I like to say, there are three kinds of investors: the average investor, the good investor, and the great investor. For the average and good investor, the importance of not investing in an industry that's outside the investor circle of competence is so they shouldn't do mistakes and invest in things they don't understand. If they invest outside the circle of competence, they'll probably lose money or have very poor returns. But the circle of competence for great investors is something on another level. Because what separates the great investor from a good investor, besides his greatness? What makes the great investor a great investor is his ability to be right when almost everyone is wrong. If his analysis isn't superior to the rest of the herd, he won't be able to have better returns than the herd. It's very, very rare to find a person who's great in two professions. And you won't even try to find a person who's great in a lot of different professions. Let's say a person who is a great musician and a great artist, and is also a great doctor, and also a great lawyer, and is also a great businessman, also a great politician. We won't find such a kind of a person. So investing in securities is a very unique profession since it covers every kind of aspect in life. If you don't expect to find a person who is a great tech nerd, and he's also a great banker, and he's also a great retailer, then we shouldn't expect to find a great investor who's great in all these industries. So the great investor won't be able to have a better analysis than the herd and be right when everyone is wrong, only in an industry that they truly understand very good. So the circle of competence for a great investor is something totally different than the circle of competence for a good investor or an average investor. Okay, so how does an investor figure out his circle of competence? So the first thing the investor should do is try to think truthfully if they feel confident in investing in this industry. And do they feel they understand how the business works? What's the company's business model? And usually an experienced investor figured this out already, but any investor, especially young investors who want to figure out their circle of competence but don't think they figured it out, I think I have a few tips for them how to help them. The first tip is the investor should ask himself, if they had $100,000 or $1 million, would they open a company in this industry? If the first response in their head is absolutely yes, I feel very confident I'll succeed in this industry, then okay, if the investor isn't a duck and they're truthful with themselves, then maybe it's in their circle of competence. But if their initial response in their mind is absolutely hell no, I'm not opening a company in this industry, I haven't the slightest idea how this industry works, then probably this industry is out of their circle of competence. Now, there's three main reasons a person would respond in their head and he would say absolutely no. The first one is because the industry is not in their circle of competence. But the second reason could be because they will never open a company in any industry, because it's the kind of person that they're afraid to open up any new business. And such a kind of a person who isn't willing to invest $100,000 to open a new business will probably have a problem also investing in $100,000 in the stock. But sometimes there are people who don't feel comfortable to open a business, but they're willing to invest money. So such a kind of person should ask himself the same exact question, but instead of thinking if he's willing to invest his own $100,000, he should ask himself if his friend is offering him $100,000 to open up a new business, and he wants him to be his manager, and he'll tell him, look for a business that you're going to be very successful in, and I'm willing to give you $100,000. If he should ask himself that kind of question, what's his response? Now, the third reason why a person would initially think hell no is because that person worked in that industry and he hates it. He knows all the problems and flaws, and he told himself he'll never open such a business. Let's say you have people who worked in a restaurant and they saw how the manager failed, and they just hate the food industry. And actually, this kind of person, he probably understands the industry better than other investors, since he knows how it works and he knows all its flaws, he knows its problem, and he probably would understand a company much better than other people. But his initial response is hell no, because he doesn't want to work in such a kind of a company, but actually it doesn't mean it's out of his circle of competence. Now, if this tip didn't work and the investor doesn't feel he has a decisive, absolutely no answer, and they're not sure if the industry is in the circle of competence, then you can continue to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is the investor should go read the company's profile on websites like Yahoo Finance. In Yahoo Finance, you could see every company, there's a profile. If when he's reading the profile, or after he's reading the company's profile, the investor doesn't think they understood what the company does exactly, then it's probably not in their circle of competence. Now, this tip won't work sometimes because there are industries like banks or restaurants that everyone understands. And the investor will understand the company's profile very well. He's reading it, he understands everything, but it's still not in his circle of competence because he doesn't truly understand how everything works. But he understood the profile. So this tip wouldn't work sometimes in a company that he understands the industry. So if tip number 2 doesn't work, then tip number 3 can help. What the investor needs to do, he should start reading the company's 10K or 10Q. Especially there's in every 10K, there's one of the first items usually is the business item. The company explains what it does. If the investor, when he's reading the 10K and the business item, if the investor feels like he's reading gibberish and doesn't feel any connection and understanding of the business, then this industry is probably outside the circle of competence. If tip 3 doesn't work, then tip 4 can help very much. So after the investor read the company's 10K, and the investor should ask himself such a question. Okay, he understands the company, understands what the company does, but he's not sure if it's in his circle of competence. So he should ask himself, what's the company's moat? What's the company's competitive advantage? And the main point is, the investor should ask himself, how can I figure out what's the company's moat? What's unique in this company? What does this company offer that the competitors don't offer? If the investor doesn't see any way he can figure out the company's moat, that means they don't understand the industry so much. Because if they really understood the industry, they'll know how to figure out what's the company's uniqueness and what's the competitive advantage. If the investor doesn't understand how he can figure out the company's uniqueness, how to figure out their competitive advantage, that means he doesn't understand this industry very well. So I think this tip will help a lot of people if they're not sure if the company is inside their circle of competence. Now, as Buffett says, and everyone knows it, an investor could, throughout the years, can grow his circle of competence. It's not important what's a circle of competence as much as it's important to stay inside the circle of competence. The more the investor reads throughout the years, different companies, you'll learn more and more and more. But young investors or people who didn't figure out their circle of competence, I think these tips can help them very much figure out if this industry, if this company is inside their circle of competence. Thank you very much, and hope you enjoyed this video.